Let's begin with the story of a woman named Lisa Allen. For the first 34 years of her life, Lisa's habits were slowly destroying her. She started smoking at 16 and struggled with chronic obesity. By her early 30s, she was $10,000 in debt, constantly hounded by collection agents, and her marriage had just collapsed in a messy, painful divorce. She was, by all accounts, a classic case of a life spinning out of control. But today, Lisa stands before a team of researchers in a laboratory. She's lean and vibrant, with the muscle tone of an athlete who has run several marathons. She hasn't touched a cigarette in years, has a stable, successful career, and is living a new, happy life. The scientists, however, aren't focused on her physique, they're looking at her brain. When they compare scans of Lisa's brain from 10 years ago to today, they see something revolutionary. Lisa didn't overhaul her entire personality. She didn't find some magical source of willpower. She changed one single habit, smoking, and that shift triggered a chain reaction that rewired the very neural pathways of her brain. This is the habit cure. This is the realization that our lives are not defined by our intentions, but by our routines. So, how do habits actually work? Well, imagine your brain as an incredibly efficient computer, always looking for ways to save energy. Every time you perform an action, your brain decides whether to turn it into a routine. This process can be broken down into a simple 3-step loop. First, there's the cue, a trigger that tells your brain to go into automatic mode. This could be a time of day, a certain location, an emotion, or even the presence of other people. For a smoker, the cue might be finishing a meal. The second step is the routine, which is the behavior itself, physical, mental, or emotional. It's the act of lighting up the cigarette. Finally, there's the reward. This is what helps your brain figure out if this particular loop is worth remembering for the future. The reward could be the nicotine rush, the feeling of satisfaction, or the social connection of smoking with friends. Over time, this cue routine reward loop becomes more and more automatic, until a powerful sense of anticipation and craving emerges. This is the neurological basis of a habit. Now, let's look at a fascinating experiment conducted by researchers at MIT. They placed rats in a T-shaped maze. At the start, a partition would open with a click, and the rat would wander down the central alley. In one arm of the T, a piece of chocolate was waiting. Initially, when the click sounded, the rat's brain activity would spike. The rat would sniff around, scratch the walls, and eventually find the chocolate. Its brain was working hard, processing all this new information. But after doing this dozens of times, something changed. The rat stopped wandering. As soon as the click sounded, it would zoom down the alley and straight to the chocolate. What's more, its brain activity changed dramatically. The mental effort at the beginning of the maze flatlined. There was only a spike of activity at the very beginning when the click cue happened, and at the very end, when it found the reward. The brain had offloaded the task of navigating the maze to its habit center, the basal ganglia. It had created a chunk of behavior that could be executed almost mindlessly. This is exactly what happens in our own lives. Think about backing your car out of the driveway. The first few times you did it, you were hyper-aware of every movement, checking mirrors, turning the wheel, judging the distance. Now, you probably do it without even thinking. Your basal ganglia has taken over. This energy-saving mechanism is essential. Without it, our brains would be overwhelmed by the mundane details of daily life, leaving no mental space for creative thought or complex problems. But this same efficiency is what makes bad habits so sticky. The brain doesn't distinguish between good and bad routines. It just sees an efficient way to respond to a cue and get a reward. So if habits are so automatic, how can we possibly change them? This brings us to the golden rule of habit change. You can't truly extinguish a bad habit. Instead, you need to keep the old cue and the old reward, but insert a new routine. Let's go back to Lisa Allen. When the researchers asked her how she quit smoking, she said it all started during a trip to Cairo. The loneliness and sense of despair she felt there acted as a powerful cue. One morning, overwhelmed, instead of reaching for a cigarette, she decided to go for a run in the desert. The routine was different, but she still got a reward, a sense of accomplishment, and a flood of endorphins. She kept the cue, the craving for a release, and she got a rewarding feeling, but she replaced the routine. This wasn't an overnight fix. It was a conscious choice she had to make again and again. She started planning her runs. She set small goals. Successfully changing one habit gave her a sense of victory, a small win that created a ripple effect. This is what researchers call a keystone habit. Keystone habits are small changes or habits that people introduce into their routines that unintentionally carry over into other aspects of their lives. For Lisa, exercise was the keystone. It taught her about setting goals and discipline. This new mindset spread. She started tracking her food, which helped her eat better. She started planning her finances, which helped her get out of debt. She didn't consciously decide to fix her entire life. She just focused on changing one thing, and that one change started a cascade of positive transformation. Another powerful keystone habit is simply making your bed every morning. It might sound trivial, but as U.S. Navy Admiral William H. McRaven explained in a famous speech, it's a small task that, when completed, gives you a small sense of pride and encourages you to do another task, and another. By the end of the day, that one completed task will have turned into many completed tasks. It reinforces the fact that the little things in life matter. But here's the crucial part. For a new habit to stick, you have to believe it can. Researchers studying Alcoholics Anonymous found that the program's success is just about replacing the routine of drinking. A critical component is belief. People who succeeded in the program often pointed to a moment where they started to believe in a higher power or simply in the community and the process itself. This belief, this faith that things could be different, was the ingredient that helped them weather the stressful moments when the old cravings came roaring back. When you hit a rough patch, and you will, belief is what helps you stick with the new routine instead of reverting to the old one. It's the conviction that your efforts will eventually pay off. So, let's bring it all together. To change a habit, you first need to identify the loop. What's the cue that triggers your routine, and what's the reward you're actually craving? Are you bored? Stressed? Seeking connection? Once you understand the cue and the reward, you can start experimenting with different routines. If you bite your nails when you're bored at work, try getting up and walking around for 5 minutes instead. If you snack on junk food while watching TV, try replacing it with a cup of tea or some fruit. The key is to find a new routine that provides a similar reward. And finally, cultivate belief. Surround yourself with a supportive community. Track your progress to see the small wins and truly believe that change is possible. Lisa Allen's story isn't about a miracle. It's a testament to the fact that by understanding how habits work, we can systematically rebuild our lives, one routine at a time. Have you ever tried to break a bad habit and just couldn't? Maybe it's doom scrolling at night, reaching for snacks when you're not hungry, or hitting that snooze button one too many times. It feels like you're fighting a battle against yourself, and more often than not, you lose. What if I told you that this struggle isn't about willpower or self-discipline? It's about a hidden force operating deep inside your brain, a ghost in the machine that controls up to 40% of your daily actions without you even realizing it. This force is the power of habit, and understanding how it works is the first step to finally taking control. To really get this, we need to travel back to the late 1990s and meet a man who would change our understanding of the human mind forever. His name was Eugene Pauly. A viral infection had ravaged his brain, completely destroying a critical part called the medial temporal lobe. The result, Eugene could no longer form new memories. His memory reset every few minutes. Imagine introducing yourself to someone, leaving the room for a moment, and when you come back, they greet you as a complete stranger. That was Eugene's reality. Every conversation was the first conversation. Every meal was a new experience. His life was a series of disconnected moments, an endless present with no past to link it to. And yet, this man, whose brain couldn't store a single new memory, started to do the impossible. One morning, his wife Beverly couldn't find him in the house. She was terrified. A man with no memory, lost in the world, how would he ever find his way back? She frantically searched the house and was about to call for help when the front door opened. It was Eugene. He had gone for a walk, by himself, around the block, navigated every corner correctly, and returned home safely. When Beverly asked him where he had been, he just shrugged. He had no idea. He didn't even know he had left the house. So how did he do it? This baffling event caught the attention of scientists, who began to study Eugene intensely. What they discovered was a neurological bombshell. While the part of Eugene's brain that stored conscious memories was wiped out, another, more ancient part was perfectly fine. This region is called the basal ganglia. Think of your brain as a bustling city. The prefrontal cortex is the shiny downtown skyscraper where the CEO's your conscious mind makes big, complex decisions. But the real work, the day-to-day running of the city, happens in the old, industrial district, the basal ganglia. This is where habits live. Scientists realized Eugene wasn't remembering his walk. He was running a program. His brain had encoded the sequence of actions: open the door, turn left, walk to the corner, turn again, into a habit loop. This loop is a neurological shortcut that our brains create to save energy. It consists of 3 parts: a cue, a routine, and a reward. For Eugene, the cue might have been the morning light. The routine was the walk itself, and the reward, perhaps the fresh air, or simply the feeling of returning to the familiarity of home, even if he couldn't consciously recognize it. This discovery reveals a fundamental truth about all of us. Your habits aren't stored with your memories or your conscious thoughts. They are etched into the primitive, automatic part of your brain. This is why you can drive home from work and not remember a single turn you made. Your basal ganglia was at the wheel, running the drive home program, freeing up your conscious mind to worry about dinner or replay a conversation from your day. This system is incredibly efficient. It allows us to perform complex behaviors like brushing our teeth, tying our shoes, or even playing a musical instrument on autopilot. But as Eugene's story hints, this effort-saving mechanism is a powerful double-edged sword, because the brain doesn't judge. It doesn't know the difference between a good habit and a bad one. It just follows the loop. Cue, routine, reward. Let's look at a common example. Stress eating. The cue might be a stressful email from your boss. The routine is to walk to the kitchen and grab a bag of chips. The reward is that immediate, satisfying crunch and the temporary distraction from your anxiety. Every time you complete this loop, the neural pathway gets stronger. The connection between the cue, routine, and reward becomes more automatic, more ingrained. After a while, you don't even think about it. The stressful email hits your inbox, and before you know it, you're halfway through a family-sized bag of chips, wondering what just happened. You weren't making a conscious choice. Your habit loop took over. This is the ghost in the machine. It's the automatic pilot that's running your life, for better or for worse. The good news is, you're not powerless. Now that we understand the mechanism, we can learn how to hijack it. The key to changing a habit isn't to fight the routine head-on. That's like trying to stop a runaway train by standing in front of it. Instead, you need to become a detective of your own behavior. The first step is to identify the loop. For the next week, pick one habit you want to change. When you catch yourself doing it, grab a notebook and answer a few questions. What was the cue? Where are you? What time is it? What was your emotional state? Who else is around? What did you do immediately before the urge? You're looking for a pattern. Maybe you only smoke when you have your morning coffee. Maybe you only bite your nails when you're bored in a meeting. The cue is the trigger, and finding it is the most critical step. Once you've identified the cue and the routine, the next piece of the puzzle is the reward. This can be tricky, because the reward isn't always obvious. It's the craving that the habit satisfies. When you get that urge to check your phone, what are you really craving? Is it a break from work? A connection with friends? A distraction from an uncomfortable feeling? Try experimenting. When the urge hits, instead of performing your usual routine, try something different that might deliver a similar reward. If you think you're craving social connection, chat with a coworker for a few minutes instead of scrolling through social media. If you think you're craving a distraction, take a quick walk around the office. The goal is to isolate what your brain is truly after. This brings us to the golden rule of habit change. You can't eliminate a bad habit, you can only change it. Keep the old cue, deliver the old reward, but insert a new routine. Let's go back to the stress eating example. The cue is the stressful email. The reward you're craving is a moment of distraction and relief. You've identified this through your experiments. So, when that email lands, you have a plan. You've kept the cue. Now, you insert a new routine. Instead of grabbing chips, you get up and do 10 push-ups, or you listen to your favorite song, or you text a friend. The routine is different, but it leads to a similar reward, a mental break, and a shift in your emotional state. By consciously and repeatedly choosing this new routine, you begin to overwrite the old neural pathway. You're teaching your basal ganglia a new program. It won't be easy at first. Your brain will fight you. It will scream for the old, familiar routine. This is where belief comes in. Researchers found that one of the most important factors for long-term habit change is believing that you can change. And the best way to foster that belief is through community. Joining a group of people who are also working on changing their habits, whether it's a running club, a support group, or just a few friends with similar goals, dramatically increases your chances of success. When you stumble, which you will, the group is there to remind you that it's possible and to help you get back on track. It creates a system of accountability and shared belief that strengthens your own resolve. You're not just hacking a neurological loop anymore. You're changing your identity. You're becoming a runner, a healthy eater, a The story of Eugene Polly is a powerful reminder that we are creatures of habit. His life, stripped of memory, revealed the raw, underlying machinery that guides us all. This machinery can keep us stuck in cycles of behavior we desperately want to escape, but it also holds the key to our transformation. By understanding the cue, route, and reward loop, we can move from being passive passengers to active drivers of our own lives. We can take the automatic, unconscious patterns that shape our days and consciously redesign them to build a better future. It's not about a sudden, dramatic transformation. It's about making one small change, identifying one loop, and rewriting one routine at a time. So what's the one habit you're going to start with today? Part 1. The habits of individuals. Have you ever wondered why you do the things you do? almost without thinking? Why you reach for your phone the second you wake up, or grab a snack every afternoon like clockwork. These aren't just random actions, they're habits, and understanding them is the first step to mastering them. Now that we know habits are ingrained in our brains, let's explore how they actually work. We'll start by focusing on you, the individual, and the tiny loops that shape your day, your work, and your well-being. At the heart of every single habit, from brushing your teeth to endlessly scrolling social media, lies a simple, three-part framework. It's called the habit loop. First, there's the cue. Think of this as the trigger, the starting pistol for your habit. It could be a notification ping on your phone, a feeling of boredom creeping in, or even a specific time of day. The cue is a signal to your brain to switch into automatic mode and run a familiar program. Next comes the routine. This is the action itself, the behavior you perform. It can be something physical, like eating a cookie or going for a run. It can be mental, like worrying about the future or daydreaming. Or it can even be emotional, like feeling a sudden spike of anxiety. This is the part of the habit we're most aware of. Finally, and most importantly, there's the reward. This is the payoff, the little hit of pleasure or satisfaction that makes your brain say, "Hey, that was good. Let's remember this for next time." This reward is what makes the whole loop worth repeating and solidifies the habit in your mind. Let's look at a real-world example, the classic afternoon snack attack. Picture this. It's 3 o'clock every single day, and you find yourself wandering over to the kitchen or the vending machine. You assume you're just hungry. But what if we look closer? The cue might not be hunger at all. It could be the mid-afternoon slump, a moment of boredom, or even a need for a quick break and some social interaction. The routine is the familiar trip to the break room and buying that candy bar or bag of chips. But the reward, you might think it's the sugar rush, but what if the true reward is the 5-minute chat you have with a coworker while you eat, the brief escape from your desk? Once you identify the reward you're truly seeking, you unlock the power to change the routine. Instead of the candy bar, maybe a quick walk to a colleague guest desk for a chat would provide the exact same reward, the social connection without the unhealthy side effects. So why do some habits feel absolutely impossible to break? The secret ingredient is craving. Over time, your brain gets smart. It starts to anticipate the reward long before you actually get it. The moment you perceive the cue, your brain begins craving that reward. You don't just brush your teeth. You start craving that fresh, tingly feeling. You don't just see a notification. You crave the potential social validation waiting on the other side. This craving is the powerful engine that keeps the habit loop spinning, turning a simple action into a nearly unbreakable cycle. This is where we introduce the golden rule of habit change. You see, you can't just erase a bad habit. The neural pathway is already carved into your brain. Trying to fight it with willpower alone is like trying to stop a river with your bare hands. It's exhausting and rarely works. Instead, you have to redirect the flow. The golden rule is beautifully simple. Keep the same cue, provide the same reward, but insert a new routine. Let's re-examine that stress-eating habit. The cue is feeling stressed. The old routine is reaching for junk food. The reward is a feeling of comfort and distraction. Now, using the golden rule, we keep the cue, stress, and we keep the reward we're actually seeking, comfort, but we swap the routine. The new habit could be, feel stress, put on your shoes for a 10-minute walk, and still achieve that feeling of comfort and mental space. The cue is the same, the reward is the same, but the routine is transformed. True transformation isn't about having superhuman willpower. It's about being a smarter designer of your own life. You are not a prisoner of your patterns. The incredible thing is that the science of habits works for everyone. The secret is always the same. Habits are just systems, and any system can be redesigned. You have the power to analyze your loops, understand your cravings, and consciously choose new routines that serve you better. By understanding this fundamental framework, you've already taken the most important step towards lasting change. In our upcoming videos, we'll dive even deeper. We'll explore the science behind the craving brain and uncover the power of keystone habits, those single transformative habits that can trigger a cascade of positive changes throughout your entire life. Part 2. The habits of successful organizations. Have you ever wondered why some companies just seem to get it right? They innovate, they grow, and their employees are genuinely happy. Is it luck, a genius CEO, or is it something deeper, something woven into the very fabric of the organization? We've explored how habits shape our individual lives, from hitting the gym to quitting junk food. But what happens when we scale that up? Habits don't just exist in our brains. They exist in our workplaces, our communities, our entire societies. These are the unwritten rules, the way things are done around here, that guide everything from how a team brainstorms to how a company handles a crisis. Today, we're shifting our focus from the individual to the collective. We're going to uncover how a single, powerful habit can trigger a chain reaction, transforming an entire organization from the inside out. This isn't just about small tweaks. It's about finding the one change that makes all other changes possible. It's the secret of what we call keystone habits. Imagine this: at 1987, a room full of anxious Wall Street investors and analysts are gathered to hear from the new CEO of Alcoa, a massive aluminum company. They're expecting to hear about profits, cost-cutting, and market share. The new CEO, a man named Paul O'Neill, steps up to the podium. The room goes quiet, and what does he say? He says, "I want to talk to you about worker safety." You could have heard a pin drop. Safety, what about the bottom line? The investors were baffled. Some sold their stock immediately, thinking this guy was completely out of touch with reality. But Paul O'Neill knew something they didn't. He knew he couldn't just walk in and demand excellence. An entire culture doesn't change on command. He needed a starting point, a lever. He had found his keystone habit. O'Neill made a simple but radical new rule. Anytime a worker was injured, the president of that unit had to report it directly to him, the CEO, within 24 hours. And it wasn't just a report. It had to come with a concrete plan to ensure that exact injury would never, ever happen again. Think about the implications of that one rule. To report an injury that quickly, a unit president needed to know about it almost instantly. That meant the workers on the factory floor needed a direct, open line of communication to their supervisors and those supervisors to their managers, all the way up the chain. Suddenly, the old rigid hierarchy started to break down. Workers felt empowered to speak up, not just about safety, but about inefficiencies and ideas for improvement they saw every day. To prevent injuries in the first place, the manufacturing process itself had to be Why did that machine malfunction? Why was that walkway slippery? To fix the root causes of accidents, Alcoa had to invest in better equipment, smarter processes, and more training. Quality control improved, production became more reliable, and costs went down. This focus on one thing, safety, created a ripple effect that touched every single part of the company. Communication got better. Efficiency soared. Innovation flourished. It forced everyone, from the factory floor to the executive suite, to work together towards a common goal. And the result, by the time Paul O'Neill retired, Alcoa's profits had hit a record high, and its market value had grown by billions. It had become one of the safest companies in the entire world. All because one leader understood the incredible power of a keystone habit. So what's the lesson for us? Whether you're trying to improve your own life, your team at work, or even your family dynamics, you don't have to fix everything all at once. That's overwhelming and often leads to failure. Instead, look for your keystone habit. Look for that one small win, that one positive change that will naturally pull other good habits along with it. It could be as simple as making your bed every morning, which can lead to a tidier room and a more organized day. In a business, it might be starting every meeting on time, which fosters a culture of respect and efficiency. The key is to find the one habit that starts a cascade of positive change, making every other goal easier to achieve. What could be a keystone habit in your life or your workplace? Think about it. It's a powerful concept that can unlock incredible potential. Chapter 5. Starbucks and the Habit of Success. Ever wonder why Starbucks spends millions training its employees? It's not just about perfecting your latte. It's about something much more fundamental to success: willpower. Today, we re-diving deep into the science of self-discipline and how one of the world's biggest companies has hacked it. This is a game changer, not just for baristas, but for anyone who wants to achieve more in their life. So, let's talk about willpower. We often think of it as this magical force of character that some people just have and others don't. But what if I told you that's completely wrong? Scientists have made a fascinating discovery. Willpower isn't a personality trait, it's a limited resource. Think of it like a muscle in your arm. If you lift weights all morning, by the afternoon, that muscle is going to be tired, right? It won't be able to lift as much. Willpower works the exact same way. Throughout your day, you're constantly exercising this willpower muscle. Every time you resist checking your phone during a meeting, choose a salad over a burger for lunch, or force yourself to focus on a boring task, you're using up a little bit of your willpower. And just like a physical muscle, it gets fatigued. This is a concept called decision fatigue or ego depletion. This explains so much about our daily struggles. Why is it so easy to stick to a diet in the morning, but so hard to resist that pint of ice cream at night? Because after a long day of making decisions and resisting temptations, your willpower muscle is exhausted. You have less mental energy left to make good choices. If you spend your morning dealing with a dozen frustrating emails, you'll have less patience for your kids in the evening. It's not because you're a bad parent. It's because your willpower tank is running on empty. This is where Starbucks comes in. They faced a huge problem. Their employees, the baristas, are on the front lines. They deal with long lines, complex orders, and sometimes, very stressed out customers. A single angry customer yelling about their drink could derail an entire morning, not just for the barista but for everyone in the store. Starbucks knew they couldn't just rely on their employees' willpower to stay calm and professional all day. They knew that by 3 p.m., after hundreds of orders and a few difficult interactions, their barista's willpower would be shot. So, what did they do? They developed a brilliant system, a kind of organizational habit that bypasses the need for willpower in those critical moments. They created a routine for their employees to follow whenever a customer is upset. You might have heard of it. It's called the latte method. It's an acronym that stands for listen, acknowledge, take action, thank, and explain. Let's break it down. When a customer starts complaining, the barista doesn't have to drain their limited willpower trying to figure out how to respond gracefully. They just launch the latte habit loop. First, they listen to the customer's full complaint without interrupting. This immediately de-escalates the situation because the customer feels heard. Next, they acknowledge the complaint. They say something like, "I understand you're frustrated that your drink isn't hot enough." This shows empathy and validates the customer's feelings, rather than making them feel like they're wrong. Then, they take action. This is the crucial problem-solving step. They offer a solution, like "let me remake that for you right away." This moves the interaction from a conflict to a resolution. After the problem is solved, they thank the customer. "Thank you for letting us know so we can make it right." This simple step turns a negative experience into a positive one, showing the customer that their feedback is valued. Finally, they explain why the problem occurred, but only if it's appropriate. Something like, "We had a rush just now, and I apologize for the mistake." This adds a human element and provides closure. See what they did? Starbucks didn't try to train their employees to have more willpower. That's incredibly difficult. Instead, they created a pre-programmed response, a habit that kicks in automatically during a moment of high stress. By turning self-control into an automatic routine, they ensure a consistently high level of customer service, even when their employees are tired, stressed, and running low on personal willpower. The barista doesn't have to think, they just have to act according to the plan. This is habit formation at an institutional level. So, how can we apply this powerful lesson to our own lives? This is where it gets really exciting. The Starbucks method isn't just for handling angry coffee drinkers. It's a blueprint for managing our own moments of weakness. What author Charles Duhigg calls inflection points. An inflection point is a moment when you know your willpower is going to be tested. It's that 3 p.m. slump when you crave a sugary snack. It's the moment you get home from work, exhausted, and the couch is calling your name instead of the gym. It's that feeling of frustration when your toddler has a meltdown in the grocery store. The key is not to hope you'll have enough willpower in that moment. The key is to plan for that moment in advance. You need to create your own latte method for your personal inflection points. First, identify the cue. What triggers your undesirable behavior? Is it a time of day, a specific emotion, like boredom or stress? A location, like walking past the vending machine? Once you know the cue, you need to design a new routine. A specific, pre-planned action you will take the instant that cue appears. If your inflection point is that mid-afternoon energy crash, your cue is feeling tired, around 3 p.m. Your old routine is to grab a cookie. Your new, pre-planned routine could be to stand up, stretch for 1 minute, and drink a large glass of cold water. Or maybe it's to walk over to a coworker's desk and have a 2-minute chat. The routine itself almost doesn't matter, as long as it replaces the old one and gives you a similar reward, in this case, a break from work and a small boost. Let's take another example. Let's say you want to exercise after work, but you always feel too tired. The cue is walking through the front door after your commute. Your old routine is to drop your bag, collapse on the couch, and turn on the TV. Your willpower is too low to fight that urge. So, create a new routine. The night before, lay out your gym clothes. The moment you walk in the door, that's the cue. Your new routine is to immediately change into your gym clothes without even sitting down. You don't even have to go to the gym right away. The goal is just to complete the new routine. But once you have your gym clothes on, the chances of you actually going have skyrocketed. You've automated the first, most difficult step. This is about building systems for success, not just relying on fleeting motivation. It's about being a strategist in your own life. Identify the moments you are most vulnerable. What are your personal inflection points? Then, write down a simple plan, a 1-2-3-step routine you will follow when that moment arrives. It could be for dealing with procrastination, handling arguments with your partner, or sticking to your budget. When I feel the urge to procrastinate on a big project, my plan is to set a timer for just 15 minutes and work on the smallest possible piece of it. That's it. By creating a plan for your inflection points, you are conserving your precious willpower for the truly unexpected challenges life throws at you. You are building a habit of success, just like Starbucks built a habit of excellent customer service. You are turning self-discipline from a struggle into a script. So think about it. What is one inflection point in your life that you can create a plan for right now? Share it in the comments below. Let's learn from each other. Building these small routines can lead to massive transformations. Chapter 6. The Power of a Crisis Leading Through Accident and Design. Ever wonder why some organizations fall apart during a crisis, while others emerge stronger than ever? The answer often lies in their hidden habits, the unspoken rules that govern how people work together. Most of the time, these habits are just harmless truces, little agreements that keep different departments from stepping on each other's toes. But what happens when those truces become deadly? Let's travel back to London. 1987. It's a chilly November evening at the King's Cross Underground Station, one of the busiest transport hubs in the world. Deep beneath the city streets, a passenger drops a lit match onto an escalator. It falls through a gap and ignites a buildup of grease and debris underneath. A small fire starts. A ticket collector sees the smoke, but he doesn't call the fire department. Why? Because according to the unwritten rules of the London Underground, that wasn't his job. His responsibility was collecting tickets, not fighting fires. Someone else was supposed to handle that. Meanwhile, the safety department, the very people whose job it was to handle these situations, didn't investigate either. They hadn't received an official form requesting their intervention. So they waited. The unspoken truce was clear. We don't act until the proper paperwork is filed. And so, the fire grew. The escalator, made of wood, turned into a giant, angled blowtorch, shooting a superheated jet of flame up into the ticket hall. Panicked commuters were trapped. In the end, 31 people lost their lives. The investigation that followed revealed a shocking truth. The tragedy wasn't just caused by a dropped match. It was caused by the organization's habits. These habits, designed to maintain peace and avoid internal conflicts, had completely failed when it came to ensuring safety. Each department stuck to its own narrow role, creating a system where no one was truly responsible for the bigger picture. The truce had become a death sentence. This story is a chilling reminder of how dangerous organizational habits can be. They're often invisible, created by accident, over years of people just trying to get along. But a crisis has a unique way of shining a very bright, very unforgiving light on these hidden flaws. And this brings us to a critical insight for anyone in a position of leadership. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. A moment of intense pressure, fear, and public scrutiny is also a moment of incredible opportunity. It's the one time when the old, broken truces can be shattered and replaced with something better. Let's look at another story, this time from a hospital. At Rhode Island Hospital, a series of devastating surgical errors rocked the institution. In one case, a surgeon operated on the wrong side of a patient's head. The public was outraged, the media was relentless, and the hospital's reputation was in tatters. It was a full-blown crisis. The fear and pressure were immense, but the hospital's leadership, instead of just trying to manage the public relations fallout, saw an opportunity for fundamental change. They recognized that the errors weren't just the fault of individual doctors. They were a symptom of a systemic problem. The existing habits and hierarchies within the operating room were failing patients. So, they seized the moment. They used the crisis to introduce a radical new habit, mandatory safety checklists. This wasn't just another piece of paper to sign. It was a complete overhaul of the operating room's power structure. The checklist, inspired by aviation safety protocols, had to be completed before any surgery could begin. It required every single person in the room, from the top surgeon to the newest nurse, to confirm the patient's identity, the surgical site, and the procedure. But here's the most powerful part. The new system empowered any member of the team, including nurses, to halt the procedure if they felt something was wrong. This was revolutionary. It broke the old unspoken truce that the surgeon's authority was absolute and could never be questioned. Suddenly, a nurse had the institutional backing to stop a world-renowned surgeon in their tracks. This new habit didn't just prevent errors, it created a new culture of shared responsibility and psychological safety. The contrast between King's Cross and Rhode Island Hospital couldn't be starker. At King's Cross, the leaders were blind to their toxic habits until it was too late. At Rhode Island Hospital, the leaders used the crisis as a lever to deliberately install a new, life-saving habit. They understood that when an organization is in turmoil, when everyone is scared and looking for direction, they are also most receptive to change. The old ways have clearly failed, and people are desperate for a new path forward. A good leader doesn't just manage a crisis, they harness its energy. They identify the toxic truces that led to the failure and deliberately design new routines to replace them. They create new patterns of communication, new power dynamics, and new standards of behavior. This is the power of a crisis. It's a moment of reckoning that forces us to confront the things we'd rather ignore. Think about your own workplace, your community, or even your personal life. What are the unspoken truces? What are the things everyone just accepts to avoid conflict? Are they harmless, or are they holding you back? Could they, under pressure, become dangerous? A crisis, whether it's a major public disaster or a personal setback, gives you the permission to rewrite the rules. It is a chance to look at the habits that have built up over time and ask a tough question. Is this really the best way to do things? When the fire at King's Cross was finally extinguished, the London Underground was forced to change. A new leader, Desmond Fennell, was brought in. He conducted a sweeping investigation and systematically dismantled the old truces. He gave clear responsibility for safety to specific managers, tearing down the walls between departments. He created new habits of communication and accountability. He used the memory of the 31 victims to justify every difficult, disruptive change. He didn't let the crisis go to waste. So, the next time you face a crisis, remember this. Don't just focus on putting out the fire. Look for the underlying cause. Look for the broken habits, the toxic truces. See the crisis not just as a threat, but as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build something better, something stronger, and something safer. Great leaders don't just survive a crisis. They use it to transform their organizations for the better. They understand that the most profound and lasting changes are often born from the most difficult moments. Chapter 7. How Target Knows What You Want Before You Do. Ever wonder if your favorite store knows you a little too well, like creepily well? Today, we're diving deep into the world of retail giants and their secret weapon, predictive analytics. We'll uncover how companies like Target know what you want, sometimes even before you do. And trust me, the stories are wild. Let's start with a mind-blowing tale that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. A man once barged into a Target store in Minneapolis. Furious, he confronted the manager, waving a handful of coupons that had been mailed to his house. They were all for baby stuff cribs, diapers, maternity clothes. The problem? They were addressed to his daughter, who was still in high school. He was livid. "Are you trying to encourage my daughter to get pregnant?" he yelled. The store manager was completely baffled. He hadn't a clue why this had happened and offered a sincere apology. But the story doesn't end there. About a week later, the same father called the manager back. This time, his tone was completely different. He was apologetic, almost sheepish. He said, "I had a talk with my daughter. It turns out there have been some activities in my house I wasn't completely aware of. She's due in August." Think about that for a second. Target's computer system knew this high school girl was pregnant before her own father did. How is that even possible? It's not magic, it's data. Every time you shop, you're not just a person buying things, you're a collection of habits. And retailers are obsessed with understanding those habits. They assign every single customer a unique guest ID number. This ID links all your purchases together, whether you buy online or in store, use a credit card, a coupon, or a loyalty card. It tracks everything you buy, every time. So, how did they pinpoint this specific pregnancy? A statistician named Andrew Pohl, hired by Target, was given a mountain of data and a simple mission: figure out if a customer is pregnant, even if they don't want us to know. The marketing team knew that new parents are a goldmine. They're tired, overwhelmed, and willing to buy almost anything that promises to make their lives easier. If Target could get them into the store to buy diapers, they'd likely also buy groceries, clothes, and maybe even a new TV. The key was to reach them before any other retailer did. Pohl and his team started digging through the data. They analyzed the shopping histories of women who had signed up for Target's baby registry. This gave them a control group. They could see exactly what these women bought and when. Throughout their pregnancies, they found some obvious patterns, like buying a lot of lotion around the beginning of the second trimester. But then they dug deeper. They noticed pregnant shoppers weren't just buying any lotion. They were buying larger quantities of unscented lotion. They were also buying supplements like calcium, magnesium, and zinc, and lots of cotton balls. Alone, none of these purchases are a dead giveaway. But together, they form what data scientists call a habit signature. Pohl's team identified about 25 different products that, when analyzed together, allowed them to assign every female shopper a pregnancy prediction score. This score was so accurate, it could even estimate her due date, allowing Target to send her relevant coupons at just the right stage of her pregnancy. This was a massive breakthrough for the marketing department. They could now target expectant mothers with surgical precision. But there was a problem, a big one. As the story of the angry father showed, people get spooked when they feel like they're being watched too closely. It's one thing to get a coupon for a product you just bought. It's another thing entirely to get coupons for an event you haven't even announced to your own family. It feels intrusive. It feels creepy. The team at Target knew they had to be clever. They had this incredibly powerful tool, but if they were too obvious about it, they would scare customers away. So they came up with what they called the sandwich strategy. It's genius in its simplicity. Instead of sending a booklet full of just baby-related coupons, which would be a dead giveaway, they started mixing them in with other things. Imagine you're a woman whose data signature flags you as pregnant. You get a mailer from Target. Inside, you see a coupon for diapers. But right next to it is a coupon for a lawnmower, and next to that, a coupon for a 6-pack of beer, and then one for wine glasses. The baby-related ads are sandwiched between seemingly random items and even things a pregnant woman wouldn't buy. Suddenly, the whole thing feels less like surveillance and more like a coincidence. Oh, Target just sent me some random coupons, you might think. I guess they send baby stuff to everyone. By camouflaging their true intent, Target made their hyper-targeted marketing feel normal. They were still using their knowledge of your impending life change, but they were doing it in a way that didn't set off alarm bells. They were making the new, predicted habit feel like just another part of your existing routine. This strategy was wildly successful. It allowed Target to leverage its predictive power without alienating its customers. And it's not just about pregnancy. This same logic applies to countless other life events. Are you about to move? Your purchasing habits will change. You might buy boxes, packing tape, and cleaning supplies. Getting a divorce. There are data patterns for that too. Retailers are constantly looking for these habit signatures to predict your next big move. The core principle here is that our habits are both powerful and malleable. Most of the time, we run on autopilot. We buy the same brand of toothpaste, drive the same route to work, and eat the same things for breakfast. But during major life events, like having a baby, moving to a new city, or starting a new job, our habits become flexible. We are suddenly open to new routines, new products, and new ways of doing things. For marketers, these moments are golden opportunities. It's the perfect time to slide a new habit into your life. If they can get you to start buying their brand of coffee during the chaos of moving, you'll likely stick with that brand for years to come. They're not just selling you a product. They're trying to embed themselves into your routine for the long haul. So, the next time you get a mailer full of what seem like random coupons, take a closer look. Is there a hidden pattern? Is a company trying to subtly nudge you in a new direction based on something you bought last week? That ad for a new brand of cereal might not be random at all. It might be a calculated attempt to capitalize on a moment when your habits are in flux. This isn't to say it's all some evil corporate conspiracy. In many ways, this kind of targeted marketing can be helpful. Getting a coupon for something you actually need is convenient, but it's crucial to be aware of the underlying mechanics. Our data is being collected and analyzed on a scale we can barely comprehend, and it's being used to influence our behavior in subtle but powerful ways. The story of Target and the pregnant teenager is a stark reminder that in the age of big data, our secrets might not be as secret as we think. We are walking, talking bundles of habits, and someone is always watching, trying to figure out what we'll do next. Chapter 8: How Movements Happen, Rosa Parks and the Social Habit. Have you ever wondered how a single act of defiance can ignite a global revolution? We often look for heroes, a single person who changed the world. But what if the real story is much deeper, rooted in the very fabric of how we live together? Charles Duhigg, in his book The Power of Habit, argues that massive social changes, the kind that rewrite history, aren't just sparked by individuals. They're fueled by something he calls social habits, the unwritten rules and behaviors that guide our communities. Let's travel back to December 1, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama. A quiet, dignified woman named Rosa Parks is arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a bus to a white passenger. Her story is famous, a cornerstone of the civil rights movement. But here's a detail that often gets lost. She wasn't the first. Other African Americans had been arrested for the exact same act of defiance in the months prior. Yet their arrests didn't spark a citywide boycott. Their stories faded. So, why was Rosa Parks different? What made her act the catalyst? The answer, Duhigg explains, wasn't just in the act itself, but in who she was. Rosa Parks was what sociologists call a superjoiner. She was deeply, profoundly embedded in the social fabric of her community. She was the secretary of the local NAACP chapter, a respected figure in her church, and involved in numerous social clubs and charity groups. She wasn't just one person. She was a node connecting dozens of different social networks. When she was arrested, it wasn't just an attack on an individual. It was an offense against the entire web of relationships she represented. This leads us to the first stage of how a movement happens, the power of strong ties. These are the bonds of close friendship and deep personal connection. Movements don't start with strangers. They start among friends. When word of Rosa's arrest spread, it didn't travel through newspapers first. It traveled through phone calls between friends, whispers in church pews, and urgent conversations in community meetings. Her friends felt a powerful social obligation to act, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because their friend, Rosa, was in trouble. This initial burst of energy, this loyalty, is the seed from which everything else grows. But a movement of friends isn't enough to change a city. To grow, it needs to move beyond those initial close circles. This is stage 2, the activation of weak ties. Weak ties are our acquaintances, the people we know from work, our neighborhood, or our church. We might not know them well, but we share a common community. This is where social habits really kick in. For the Montgomery bus boycott to succeed, it needed the participation of thousands of people who had never even met Rosa Parks. So why did they join? It was the pressure of community expectation. Imagine you're a regular churchgoer in Montgomery in 1955. On Sunday, your pastor stands up and announces that the entire congregation is supporting the boycott. All your friends and neighbors are talking about it. They're arranging carpools, walking to work together. Suddenly, not participating means going against the grain, isolating yourself from your community. The habit of belonging, of fitting in with your social group, becomes a powerful force driving you to participate. You might not feel a passionate personal connection to the cause at first, but you join because it's what everyone you know is doing. This is the peer pressure of social habits, and it's what allows a movement to scale from a few dozen friends to thousands of participants. This brings us to the third and most transformative stage. A movement becomes a revolution when it does more than just change behaviors. It changes identities. It gives people a new habit of mind. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted for 381 days. For over a year, people found new ways to get to work, new ways to organize, and new ways to support each other. This shared struggle, this daily act of collective defiance, forged a new identity. Participants no longer saw themselves as isolated individuals enduring injustice. They started to see themselves as part of something bigger, a unified, empowered community capable of demanding change. The boycott wasn't just about buses anymore. It was about dignity, self-respect, and power. This new self-perception is the most potent habit of all. It transforms a temporary protest into a permanent shift in consciousness. The belief that we are a people who can change our world becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is how a single act, amplified by the habits of friendship and community, can give birth to a revolution that reshapes a nation. It shows us that the power to change the world doesn't just lie with heroes. It lies within the bonds we share and the habits that define who we are. Together. Chapter 9. The Neurology of Free Will. Are we responsible? Throughout this journey, we've seen that habits are automatic and operate below our conscious awareness. This leads to a difficult question. If our brains are on autopilot, are we actually responsible for what we do? Let's consider two contrasting cases. Doctors tell us about a man named Brian Thomas, who tragically strangled his wife while experiencing a sleep terror. His brain was in a purely habitual state. The part of his mind that makes choices, the prefrontal cortex, was completely offline. The court found him not guilty because he had no free will in that moment. He wasn't consciously choosing his actions. Now contrast this with the woman who lost millions at a casino. She argued that her gambling habit was so strong she had no choice but to keep betting. She felt she was on autopilot, just like the sleepwalker. But the court disagreed, and so does neuroscience. Why? Because unlike the sleepwalker, whose conscious mind was completely shut down, the gambler made a series of choices. She chose to drive to the casino. She chose to walk in. She chose to sit down at the table. At each step, she was aware of her actions, even if the pull of the habit was incredibly strong. The verdict from brain science is clear. Habits explain behavior, but they don't excuse it. The moment you become aware that a habit exists, you gain the power and the responsibility to change it. Responsibility doesn't mean you can instantly stop a bad habit through sheer willpower. It means you are responsible for noticing the cues, understanding the cravings, and consciously designing a new system that prevents the old, destructive loop from taking over. You are the architect of your own habit loops. And so, we end where we began. Habits are not destiny. They are choices we made at some point that have become automated. But the key thing to remember is this: every routine you have was learned, which means every routine can be relearned, redesigned, or replaced. The framework for change is elegantly simple, and now you have all the tools to use it. First, you must identify the routine. Be specific about the exact behavior you want to change. What are you doing? Second, experiment with rewards. When you feel the urge, what is your brain truly craving? Is it the sugar in the cookie, or is it a break from work? Is it the nicotine, or is it a moment of social connection? Try different things: a short walk, a quick chat with a colleague, a piece of fruit to figure out what truly satisfies the underlying need. Third, isolate the cue. This is the trigger that sets the whole loop in motion. What just happened? What time is it? Where are you? Who else is around? What was the preceding action or emotion? By carefully observing the 5 categories: location, time, emotional state, other people, and the immediately preceding action, you can pinpoint the exact trigger for your habit. Finally, and most importantly, have a plan. Once you know your cue, your routine, and your reward, you can create a new path. Decide in advance what you will do the next time the cue appears. For example, when it's 3 p.m. and I feel a slump at my desk, I will walk over to my friend's desk and chat for 5 minutes instead of going to the cafeteria for a cookie. This simple if-then plan preloads the decision, making it much easier to follow through in the moment. Your routines shape your days shape your life, and your life shapes your legacy. True, lasting change doesn't begin with a sudden burst of willpower. It begins with the quiet, persistent work of awareness. It starts with the decision to understand how your habits work, and then using that knowledge to consciously build better ones. You have now completed the full 120-minute masterclass on the power of habit. If this journey through the science of behavior has changed how you look at your own life, please like this video to support the channel. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more full-length audiobooks and deep dives into the minds of history's greatest thinkers. Now, I have a question for you. What is the one keystone habit you are committing to changing, starting today? Tell us in the comments below. Your story might be the inspiration someone else needs to begin their own journey. Thank you for listening. Now, go out and design the life you want, one habit at a time.